Thank you. And now we are joined by Albanas Muthoka. Albanas Muthoka is the head of pension and consulting there at Enwealth Financial Services. Did I get that right?
Correct.
Yes. All right. Yeah. Thanks a lot for creating time and coming to speak to us about the state of pension fund in Kenya and what does that mean? How are we performing as a fund? And as far as the members who have already absorbed into the fund, how is that for them? And that is the discussion that we are holding today. But let's begin at how is the fund doing? How are Kenyans absorbing the fund? How those who are eligible to really ascribe to the fund, are they taking it up?
All right. Thank you so much. And before I begin is to appreciate you for having me. It's actually my second time here. And again, let's look at the pension sector and how it is. As we speak today, the size of the pension sector is around 1.4 trillion.
1.4 trillion.
And again, looking at that particular growth from last year, 2020, it's a growth of around 5%.
Yes.
However, looking at how pension sector is actually structured is more of favoring people who are in occupational institutions. The employed people are more considered in retirement benefit sector. And they actually make the largest share of people contributing in retirement benefit scheme. Yes. And this is in addition to the statutory contributions which are being made to the national, the NSSF fund.
Yes.
Therefore, is looking at the uptake of the pension in the country is actually leaving out the critical people in this particular country, and these are the informal sector. And the reason these people have not been able to join is, first of all, lack of that particular information. And therefore, more sensitization is required for this particular group to be able to understand how pension fund actually works and the benefits of saving in a pension fund. And again, is the structure of retirement benefit schemes, which does not take care of the needs of this particular category of the population. In that sometimes when you contribute to a retirement benefit schemes, your benefits are locked. You can get a loan from a retirement benefit scheme. And therefore, this does not address the needs of that particular population. And therefore, the need to be able to innovate more and be flexible in where we are structuring retirement benefit schemes. And this is more of a policy decision that needs to be made on how then we bring on board those in the informal sector, design a product that actually works for that particular population, and again, carry out more sensitization to encourage them to start saving in retirement benefit schemes.
All right.
Yep.
Is it that now at the policy level, the benefit of including the critical majority, as you mentioned it, which is the people in the informal sector, that they've not really captured that? Or is it that we are moving very slowly towards implementing policy that would enable the bringing on board such critical majority, as you had put it?
Well, for me, I think as a sector, we are moving very slowly towards now capturing this particular group to contribute in pension funds. We have seen, again, even from the regulator coming up with Ambao Pension Fund, which is aimed at getting these particular people in the informal sector to be able to contribute in that particular pension fund. Yes. We also have other service providers within the industry who are coming up with what we are calling personal pension funds. And this is to allow them to be able to contribute in a pension arrangement, and again offering that particular flexibility in a way that you can contribute today, tomorrow you can come for your pension saving. Again, the issues of giving loans, and again, looking at SACCOs is a big competitor to pension funds. And that is one of the benefits that SACCOs are actually offering to members who are contributing in that particular institution. This is not what we currently have in a pension arrangement. And again, looking at the objectives of the two are quite different. However, it's very critical that as an industry we come up with more innovative and creative ways of helping these people to start saving in pension schemes and be able to meet the objective of providing a pension upon retirement of those particular individuals in the informal sector.
And you just mentioned there a very important point where you cited SACCOs as being competitors to pension funds. Let's talk about the performance of the pension sector comparatively in the whole financial services sector. How is it comparatively?
All right. Before I respond to that particular question,
yes,
first is to understand that the objective of the two vehicles are quite different.
Yes.
While in pension is to make sure that we provide an income for you in retirement, and therefore is a long-term vehicle, while for SACCO to be able to be more of a short term to medium term. However, in terms of performance, I want to take you back to 2019, and this was before COVID. And in 2019 is looking at the average performance of retirement benefit scheme. The return was around 17%. For other schemes, the performance was as high as 26%, depending on the risk profile that individual schemes are actually adopting. And again, this is informed by the liquidity requirements for that particular scheme. In a case where you have majority of people about to retire, therefore the liquidity requirements are slightly higher, and for you therefore is you may be required to have a more conservative investment strategy, so that at the time these particular individuals retire, you are able to provide the asset or the funds required to pay them. And in that particular case in 2019, with a return of 17%, you'll be able to look what was the greatest contributor to that particular return in 2019, sorry. And first we look at how were assets then allocated for pension schemes on average. One is you're looking at investments in government securities. For most of the scheme on average, investment in government security was around 41%. Investment in quoted equities was around 40. That was in quoted equities was was about 17%. Then again, as usual, investments in immovable property. This was around 18%. Investment in guaranteed arrangements, and these are schemes which are investing in insurance company, is that was around 15%. And therefore, the greatest contributor to the return that you have already mentioned of 17% was actually from the equity market. The equity market gave a return of 32% back in 2019, and this is December of 2019. This was followed by investments in offshore investments. We had some schemes which had actually done in offshore investment, and that was around 26% then. And that was again followed by investment in government securities at around 12.8%. And therefore, noting that in that particular period in 2019, majority of schemes had actually invested in listed equities. And that is what contributed to higher returns, because again, once you do revaluation of the equity market, is that you're getting a positive revaluation gains. Then come to 2020, all right, COVID hit, and looking at performance of pension funds in the first quarter, it was actually negative and went down to -4%. Reason why? Because majority of schemes still were overweight on the equity market, all right? Then you see now when crisis happens, is everyone trying to run into a safe corner and trying to come up with what is the strategy that now we need to be able to adopt. How long is this COVID going to stay with us? And you'll note that looking at the first half of 2020, is most of the schemes were trying to change their investment strategies, all right? And comparing to what you have already mentioned, the asset allocations in 2019, looking at June of 2020, you note that now investment in government security moved up from 41% to 43%. It's a safe haven for them. Okay? Investment in quoted equity moved down from 17% in December 2017 to 14%.
Wow.
Okay?
A drop of 3%.
A drop of 3%. All right? And the reason they are doing that is we are trying to dilute investment in the quoted equity, because this is where majority of the negative gains are actually coming from. And these are revaluation losses that the schemes are generating. And therefore, they had to reduce the exposure in the quoted equities. And that particular percentage actually now goes to the government securities. And therefore, moving now to December of 2020, is now schemes are trying to understand that this COVID is actually here with us.
It's not going anywhere.
It's actually not going anywhere. And now we have to move from our safe zones, because again, we have to generate a return for the members. All right? So looking at 31st of December of 2020, is you'll note investment as well in government security actually moved up. All right? It moved up from 43% to 44%, almost 45%. Then the equity market, the stock market started picking up, all right? And it moved now from 14% up to around 15%. The schemes that had invested in immovable property actually just remains constant. This was around 18%, which remains almost the same. However, in 2019, December, you note it slightly went down from 18 to around 17.9%.
Which is
which is slightly lower.
Yeah.
And therefore, looking at what then return did schemes then generate in December of 2020, on average, the return was around 7%.
All right.
This is for all schemes on average performance. From the 7%, the greatest support of that return that we had was actually offshore investments. Because the returns from offshore investments was almost 31%.
Wow.
In 2020.
Wow.
The reason now you find the offshore investment are doing quite well,
yes,
is some schemes realized now, because we have been investing in these traditional asset classes that we have, we need to be able to diversify our investments. We need to look for other opportunities where we can invest in and diversify some of the risks that we face in the schemes. And therefore, in 2020, there was a bit of uptake in investments in offshore investments. And you note from the report that was actually released by the Retirement Benefits Authority, investment in offshore actually moved up to around 11 billion, which made, actually it was 92% jump from what we had in 2019. And the returns therefore that generated of the 7%, if you look at then the components of it, is again from the fixed income. Fixed income was around 12.8%. Listed equity was a bit hit, actually gave a negative return of 10.4%. And then looking at the offshore, we mentioned about giving a very high return.
Okay.
Moving from there, now coming to 2021, of course, now everyone is already used to this. Strategies are now getting a bit clear. Is now looking at the performances at September of 2021. Is you note that now things are starting to go back to normal. The asset allocation again have been aligned more to what we had in the previous financial year in 2019.
Pre-COVID.
And actually pre-COVID.
Yes.
And noting that now investment in government securities has actually moved up, right, to 44-45% from 43%.
Yes, yes.
Investment in listed equities, it moved now in 2019 from 17% to 14%. Now it has gone back to 16-17%. Okay.
Yeah.
Immovable property has actually gone down. As at September, it has actually gone down to 16%.
Wow.
And therefore, you're noting now schemes now are trying now to go back to where they were pre-COVID. Looking at the returns, average returns, as at September, it was 14%. This is what has been generated to the members, and we do hope by end of the year that is the same return that you're going to maintain and distribute to our members.
All right. You've mentioned government securities is where you put majority of the money.
Correct.
Because that probably gives you a guaranteed return.
Correct.
Could you classify this as the backbone of your asset classes?
Okay. Well, yes, I would classify this. However, before I mention, is on average, is most of the schemes are then investing in government securities. We mentioned around 44-45% investment in government securities. However, it is very critical, before I make that particular point, it is critical that schemes look at the age liability profile of their membership, and are trying to see where does liability actually lie. All right? Do we have a young population? If it's a young population, then it's an opportunity for them to be able to invest more in risky investment, to be able to adopt a more aggressive approach in investments. And in that particular case, the return will be slightly higher. The allocation again will be more aligned to the quoted equities and more risky investment, offshore and private equity investments. However, currently as we speak, on average for the industry, is the backbone is more on investment in government securities, which is followed by investments in immovable property, and then equity comes on the third position.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And now let's talk about mature accounts. We've retired, I've come, I need my check. How is it? Is it turning around as fast as it should? You know, we're in a market that is recovering, and I know COVID hit a bit, but where are we at as far as paying to maturity and mature accounts?
All right.
Yeah.
Well, let me mention by what happened in 2020 with the crisis, the COVID, and noting that majority of schemes were actually not contributing in the schemes because, again, financial challenges of the sponsor of that particular fund. Some of the sponsors opted to reduce the contributions, and also this is affected by reduction in the salaries. And in terms of payouts, is we had a number of schemes, actually, number of members who are coming for payment of their benefits within the scheme because of the retrenchments which were actually happening. And again, there was high demand for liquidity, high demand for payouts from schemes. And basically what happens is if you have high number of members who are leaving, is you must have a very clear process on how are we going around ensuring that we have a timely payment of these particular members, but in a way that we do not disadvantage the scheme, in a way that we don't have forced sell, where we have to sell a security at a loss so that we avail the money to pay members who are actually leaving.
Yes.
And in that particular case, you note that there was a slight alignment in terms of how assets were being allocated and moving into more of liquid assets, fixed income, call, deposits and all that. And therefore in 2019 is a payout. By law we are required to process benefits within a period of 30 days if someone is leaving without any excuse, unless there are circumstances beyond now the trustees and the service providers. However, to confirm at that particular period is when members were leaving, majority of them were paid within the period of 30 days.
30 days, yeah.
Unless there are other circumstances where, again, the demand for liquidity was high, and therefore the trustees had to give the fund manager a bit of time for them to be able to liquidate the assets that they are holding.
Yes.
But on average, is majority of members were actually paid their benefits within a period of 30 days.
All right.
Yeah.
Where we are right now, are we back to where we should be in terms of the fund?
Well, I would say yes. Again, we are seeing a bit of stability now in the market. And again, majority of scheme sponsors and employers have already resumed making contributions to the scheme. Yes. We have seen now, again, members being enrolled, the new employees being enrolled in the retirement benefit schemes. And currently, as we speak, in terms of the strategy being adopted on investment, again, this has been well streamlined. And going back to where we were before COVID. In terms of processing of benefits, currently as we speak, his members right now who are applying for their benefits, they are being paid within the required timelines without any delay being experienced by those particular members.
Okay.
And again, just to appreciate even the Retirement Benefits Authority for again stepping in and being able to support the Board of Trustees and issuing directions that the trustees need to be able to take to be able to manage issues of payment of benefits, issues to do with compliance, because at that particular time, you note in 2020, when COVID actually hit, most of the scheme did not know how to proceed on issues of how do you hold meetings, how do you communicate to our members, and now with time they started adopting these digital platforms on, again, the Zoom and all those other platforms to be able to hold meetings, to communicate to members. And right now I would see things are getting back to normal. We can see very frequent communication between the board, service providers, and also communication with the members, and ensuring that the operations of scheme are not in any way altered.
Okay. Yeah. And now let's talk about the future. How does it look like? What strategies are we putting in place to improve the efficiency of the pension fund in Kenya? Okay. How is that playing out?
Well, is currently what we are observing, and I know it's something that we are going to see going in the future, is using the digital platforms again in the operation of retirement benefit schemes. Is currently, and especially for the young generation, is for them is not the kind of people who keep following up on some information relating to pension funds. True, yeah. And therefore it is very critical. You're noting now the service providers, including Enwealth Financial Services, is that we have come up with online platforms where members can actually log in and access every information relating to the scheme. And to be able to create that transparency, because every time I have an online, it's a mobile application, I can log in, I can see who are the people that I have nominated myself as a beneficiary, and is there a need to change where that can actually be done online without having to go to the administrator or getting hard copy forms that I need to be able to execute. I need to see my historical contributions in the scheme. How much am I contributing is an information that you can access online anytime that you want. For members who want to retire, is then they can actually do a projection and say, how much do I need to top up? Or how much will I go home with in retirement? And therefore the online platform helps them to be able to actually do that projection on the mobile application, the online platforms which are there, and it informs them of then if I need to top up more, what do I need to do, how much do I need to contribute, and that particular platform actually is guiding you and say top up with this amount of money. It's very specific on how much you need to contribute, and say at the time when you retire you'll have an income replacement ratio of this particular rate. Talking of income replacement ratio is more of a percentage between what you are earning as pension in retirement and comparing this to the salary or the income that you used to earn before retirement. And saying if you retire, this will be the replacement of the income that you used to earn before retirement. Looking at the operations of the board of trustees, if you have the e-boards, and the e-boards is helping you as a trustee, is I can just log in on that particular platform and I can see the listing of all the members of my scheme. Is that if a member is leaving, you just require to go through the online claim portal where I can launch a claim on that particular platform. The trustees are able to see it on that particular e-board, and they are able to process the benefits online. I don't need now to start filling some of these hard copy forms or keep communicating. And that actually improves on the efficiency and the turnaround time on processing of benefits. Because if I'm just logging online and submitting a claim, on the same day the trustees are able to note it, the computation is there, a notification is already gone to either the approved issuer, the fund manager, and the custodian, and within a week, benefits are already processed. All right. Trustees nowadays is as part of improving on governance, is again that particular platform is able to help trustees to be able to log in and carry out performance evaluation of themselves. Is looking at yourself in the mirror and asking yourself is, well, how do I do better? All right. And therefore we give them those particular platforms where as a trustee you can check your performance, you can improve governance of the scheme, and this is again provided on an online platform which is actually there, including the performance of the service providers, and these are the agents appointed by the trustees, and therefore trustees are able to evaluate the performance of these particular service providers and check are they performing their duties as required in the service level agreement they have with the trustees. And that informs the basis of giving feedback and improving on performance of both the board and the service provider. So these are some of the things that we are looking at going in future. And again, helping in terms of risk management, which is also part of governance, is in the online application, is trustees are able to monitor what are the risks that we face as a board, as a sector, and therefore they are able to put in place mitigation measures to be able to reduce that particular exposure. And this includes monitoring of the investments. Where are we putting money? How do we need to be able to change our strategies in the event that there could be a crisis? And therefore these are some of the things which are already in place and being able to improve on efficiency and governance of retirement benefit schemes.
All right. Thanks a lot. A lot of innovation there, moving a lot of those operations and processes digital, which is really, really commendable. I mean, the world is moving digital. And we have, the pension fund also needs to move in that direction. I know our time is up, but 30 seconds, coupling it up with your final remarks. What do we need to do? Whose responsibility is it now, revisiting the claims that we made earlier as far as the critical majority is concerned, to come on board? Where does that responsibility lie? And what can we do as a sector to bring as many people as possible on board, because there are benefits to it? In closing, 30 seconds with your closing remarks.
Thank you so much. This is the responsibility of the industry as a whole. This is not something we can leave to the government, which is now the Retirement Benefits Authority in this particular case. It's not about the administrators. It's a responsibility of us as service providers, as stakeholders in this particular industry, is we need to be more innovative. All right? We need to come up with products that are able to meet the needs of these particular individuals in the informal sector, and coming up with a product that is able to address my need. First, understand what is it that they need. All right? The income that I get is not always assured in the informal sector, and therefore the little that I get, how do I ensure that I can save it? There is that assurance of security of my saving in that particular vehicle I'm putting my money in the event that I need a benefit, an additional benefit out of it. For example, a loan. I need to build a house. How can I access a mortgage facility out of it? These are some of the innovations that we need to be able to bring on board as service providers. And this, again, the regulator is already, this is part of the strategy of the Retirement Benefits Authority, trying to be able to bring on board the informal sector and coming up with the right vehicle. They have seen some of the applications and platform that the regulator is coming up with, more sensitization, you'll be able to know that they are actually going around the country, carrying out sensitization, targeting the informal sector. And therefore, the critical thing that we need to do is once we pass that particular information to the informal sector, then it is our duty as stakeholders to translate that particular information into saving. That is the role that we need to be able to play.
Okay. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for just having a good, wonderful discussion around pension fund in Kenya. Where are we at? What does the future look like? It's an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me.
Karibu sana. All right.